it's Ed, and welcome to episode 5 of Cracking the Codex. This week we're looking at the Anvil Siege Force, the Imperial Fist analog of the 10th edition Space Marine Codex. How are you feeling about this one, John?
I'm not going to lie. I like to run headlong with survivable units and stuff with lots of DACA, so this feels very much against my playstyle.
And I think you've touched on the major issue with this one. It's not to say that you can't do well with this list, this detachment, but you want to play the mission, and the bonus you get from this detachment is stand still and get bonuses. So there's a little, it's a little bit of a number there. But what do you get? So your detachment bonus is Shield of the Imperium. Effectively, all your weapons are heavy. If your weapon is already heavy, you get +1 to wound if you remain stationary. Now, on the face of it, that's a pretty good rule. The problem is there's not actually that many weapons in the Space Marine Codex that still have heavy that you want to run, which is an interesting...
Yeah, they've done a very good job on that. So when I was looking at things, I was like, cool, if this weapon was heavy, it would be a problem without this detachment. Like, say, a good example, indirect shooting hits on 3s, or a Vindicator hits on 3s. If that hit on 2s because it was stationary, that would be a problem without even the detachment.
Yeah, I heard you say a couple of words there. Indirect fire. Do you think we might be seeing a few whirlwinds in this list? Make use of it.
I feel like 10th edition is the whirlwind edition.
It really is. It wasn't. And then they got points cuts, and Desolation Marines got nerfed. So the combo of those two things, you're definitely seeing more whirlwinds than you were before. But there are a few units that can make good use out of this, and we'll get to those as we go along. So, stratagem-wise, there are 3 stratagems here that are battle tactics, and 3 that are not. We haven't run any captains in our list here, which is an interesting... We don't tend to put captains in any of our lists, realistically. I don't know if that's a list building style thing, or if just it's too efficient to use the units. You got any thoughts on that?
I think it's because often the captain will give you, outside of the free stratagem, it's often things that we don't necessarily want in the list or need, that there is something else we value higher. So something like an apothecary biologist giving lethal hits, or that sort of mechanic that if you didn't have it, you'd be like, cool, I'm really missing this from this list. So
yeah, no, that's interesting. I think if you want to really capitalize on the second stratagem here, the no threat too great, running a captain may well be a good way to do it, but you'd have to build your list in a fairly specific way to do that. So strat-wise, we've got Armor of Contempt. You know what, you love it. -1 AP to incoming attacks. Great stratagem. Always a great stratagem.
Perfect.
No threat too great. 2 CP. Your shooting phase, a unit that hasn't shot, until the end of the phase, each time a model in the unit that is selected makes a shooting attack, gets reroll wounds against monster and vehicles. That's just solid. It's expensive, but when it comes up, you're very pleased to have it, because Marines really struggle with cracking the high toughness units, and they struggle with that even more now that Oath of Moment has gone away.
Yeah, and a lot of the twin-linked weaponry tends to be very sparsely kind of spread out, and if there is something that's kind of high strength, it's a single shot thing. So even if it is twin-linked, not so great. So being able to get essentially twin-linked on a weight of dice is really handy.
Yeah, Hellblasters for me are the thing that stands out the most here.
Oh, I miss that. I miss that.
We've got Battle Drill Recall, 1 CP here, and this gives your unit sustained hits 1. This is Bolter Discipline on the stick. Even better, if the unit that's shooting remains stationary until the end of the phase, you get critical hits on a 5+. It's just good. That's going to be good with the ever-present Aggressor brick, because I think if you want to play the mission, that's just a really strong tool to have, and it's hard to write a list without it. But some of the ranged units that you want to run, especially if you're shooting at your oathed target or you have inherent rerolls, that's quite a lot of value you can get out for. All right, the other 3 stratagems, we've got Rigid Discipline. That's end of the fight phase, 1 unit within engagement range of an enemy unit. It can immediately make a fallback move of 6 inches, which is great. However, they have to either end the move wholly within your deployment zone or within range of an objective marker. Not wholly within range of the objective marker. But this is a nice one where, for example, that Aggressor brick in the midboard can be tied up in your opponent's phase, and then you can spend a CP to fall back and get some primary points, or vice versa, to at the end of your turn.
Yeah, and it's utilizing movement in their turn to position yourself where you maybe want to be, to then be shooting stationary in your turn.
That's true. Yeah. Also being able to fall back and then shoot, because there's no sort of fall back and shoot effect in this detachment. That's
agreed.
your fall back and shoot analog here for 1 CP, which is very nice. Then we've got Not One Backward Step, which is a great follow-up to the fall back stratagem. We've now got one that says don't fall back. So in your command phase, this is one infantry unit that is in range of an objective marker. They double the OC of the models in the unit. However, you must remain stationary. So this is, I think you're not going to be super happy to slam this most of the time, but it is a case of your opponent's trying to deny you primary. You get the primary, and then you just have to deal with not being able to move your unit and getting the benefit of the detachment on top of that.
Because if, for example, you're contesting an objective and you're just holding it, and there's the opportunity for things to go wrong, it's a way of then guaranteeing that even if you can't clear them off the objective with the unit that's on there, you then hopefully then halt their primary in their next turn.
Yeah, it's absolutely flexible. The nice thing about it is you can slam it down for guaranteed primary, because you put it on exactly as you're going to score, but it also gives you that flexibility of making sure you deny your opponent primary as well. You also have Hail of Vengeance for 2 CP, which is steep, and that is in your opponent's shooting phase after an enemy unit has finished resolving the entire unit's attacks. One unit that's had one or more of its models destroyed gets to make a shooting phase attack. It gets to shoot back, but it has to shoot only at the unit that shot them. That's very specific. This is a worse version of the Ironstorm Detachment one. The Ironstorm Detachment being a vehicle that is brought below half strength, gets to shoot back. That's already not super likely to happen. It's already a bit, jumping through a lot of hoops. This one feels very unlikely, and it's steep as well, 2 CP. Maybe run Asriel with a brick of Hellblasters that are running up the field, but they just die in droves, to the right unit. So I'm not convinced that you get a lot of mileage out of this one.
And it's a strat ploy, so you can't make it cheaper either, which is a shame.
Can't do it multiple times as well if you somehow manage to engineer 2 units that are benefiting there. Enhancements then. So Indomitable Fury. For 20 points, you get to stand back up on your character on a 2+. Full wounds remaining, Gravis only. It's fine. I think if I had 20 points remaining, I'd be happy to put that on. Just being able to stand back up is generally powerful.
Yeah.
It's not exciting.
I would like that on a biologist, because what you'd do is you'd have the biologist with the aggressors that you never see. They go and chew something up with some shooting, don't quite kill it, punch him to death on an objective. He gains 1 million OC. And then he's just a pain. If they shoot him, think they've dealt with him, and then he gets back up and he's like, this is now my objective.
Yeah.
OC 9.
It's useful. For anyone who wasn't sure what the value of 1 million OC is, it's 9.
Yeah, 9. Okay. Yeah.
No, it is a good use for it. However, problem is there is a better enhancement to go in that squad, which is the difficulty there. Fleet Commander. This is a captain only, and this is the good old orbital bombardment stratagem. This time, you, in one of your shooting phases, once per battle, start of the shooting phase, you pick a point. At the start of your next shooting phase, pick a point within 12 inches, draw a straight line between those two, and each unit that line passes over on a 3+, you do D3 mortal wounds to a unit that it passes over. I think this is the most reasonable version of this rule that we've seen, and I think I still don't take it. If you could whack it on any character, maybe you wanted some sort of just character in the back lines, or you were taking the lieutenant with the lone op, and you could put it on there. But I feel like if I'm taking a captain, I've got something more specific that I want to do with him.
It feels like a situation where if you're playing a pickup game with a mate, you've rolled up the ritual, you'd feel really smug that you do have this, because you go, you're on those 3 objectives that are really close to each other. I'm just going to make this line, and no matter what, you can't be on those points. But that's such a niche fringe thing. It's great when it happens, but it's 1 in a million type of thing.
It's a very fun, flavorful ability. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
Stoic Defender, 15 points. This is when the bearer is leading a unit, they have a feel no pain 6 up when they're in range of an objective mark you control, and when they're battle shocked, they halve their OC instead of changing it to 0. So with the way that modifiers work in 40k, if your OC is 1 and it's halved, it remains at 1. So this is fine.
Yeah.
I think a 6 up feel no pain is okay, but it's not exciting enough for me to build around, really.
It's helpful, but it's like anything. If someone's dealing with infiltrators that have got that ability, I find that a lot of the time they've got enough output to deal with them if that's what they're targeting anyway. So
yeah. Again, you'd probably put it on the aggressor brick or a terminator brick for forwards, but I'm not wowed by it.
No.
Speaking by the one I am wowed by, Architect of War, 25 points. And when they're leading a unit, the ranged weapons in that unit have ignores cover. So you're going to put it on the Apothecary Biologist. You're going to give him that. You're going to put him in a brick of aggressors. Suddenly your aggressors ignore cover. Jobs are good.
Helps mitigate all that sort of armor contempt, void armor sort of shenanigans that people do to be essentially in cover with minus, like negating 2 AP, right?
With how omnipresent cover is in 10th edition. It's a very strong rule. And it combos well with Battle Drill Recall, so you can get your sustained hits and really
spicy.
Take that up to another level. So we have written an example list. And I think it's fair to say we found it very difficult to write an example list that wasn't just here's what the other detachments are doing, but worse.
Yeah.
Or here's a list that's bad. So we tried to straddle the middle ground there.
Yeah.
So keep in mind that the detachment rule is if you remain stationary, you get heavy. If you had heavy already, you get +1 to wound. That really only comes into play on the tanks here, because I think there's not much that you can put in the open that's going to survive until next turn and then get value shooting your opponent, I find, unless it's a vehicle. And even then you need weight of numbers to get the benefit. So list-wise, we've gone for the Apothecary Biologists with the Ignores Cover, Architect of War combo, put them in the aggressors, with Boltstorm, put them in a Redeemer. You've seen it in every detachment so far. It's really good. It's worth running. Then we've gone for something a little bit more spicy that you might see popping up in Ironstorm detachments, which is Hellblasters in Impulsors. The Impulsors, you can put whatever you fancy in there. You can give them the 5-up invuln upgrade from the Shield Dome. I don't think that's worth it with how cover in 10th edition interacts. Usually you're going to be on a 5-up armor save anyway. So I like putting the missile array here just to get a little bit more output. So you're driving around, or you've got just enough tankiness that you can realistically park it, not move, shoot something, start to get the benefits of standing still and shooting in this detachment. Not if they're the main threat, but if there's something else that your opponent has to deal with, like the Redeemer. We've gone for the 3 units of 5 scouts. Always good, especially if they're playing the fixed detachment, fixed secondaries. 3 Inceptors with plasma here. There's enough anti-infantry flying around that you don't really need anymore. Just great for mission play. Always worth taking for scoring. And then the sort of interesting units that we've taken here, and it does pay me to say that 3 Whirlwinds are interesting, but they're going to stand still behind your home ruin. They're going to shoot every turn. They're going to hit on 3s. You can potentially put the Battle Drill Recall on them if you wanted to get exploding hits on 5s and have them hit on 2s. Yeah, it writes itself, that section of the list. Then we've got the Gladiator Lancers. They are already heavy, which means that if you move them, you've got 2 shots, strength 14, high AP, high damage. But if they stand still, they go from hitting on 3s and wounding on 3s into most vehicles to hitting on 2s and wounding on 2s, which is very nice with the single reroll you've got across the 2 dice. That's quite a nice efficiency boost there. What are we thinking on this one, John?
So when we were originally kind of trying to work out a list, I was defaulting in my head to I really like playing tactical because I like the dynamic kind of appeal to it. This, as a detachment rule, feels like it wants to be doing killing secondaries. It wants to be doing something with your scouts that require them to be moving around, but everyone else stays still. So it almost pains me to think that this is probably a bit more of a fixed kind of detachment, potentially,
absolutely.
because you're not going to be being dynamically positioned. You're not going to be moving as much as you'd like to normally. So it kind of makes sense to maybe just like, obviously depending on your matchup, having something like killing stuff or just doing your teleport homers and your scouts bouncing around could score you the points, and then the rest just clears up their problems. But I found it really hard as a detachment to get kind of a plan in mind of what I'd do with it, because the synergies aren't necessarily there for the actual core kind of overarching kind of ability anyway, because you don't stand still playing 40k, because if you stand still, you're normally hidden and you can't see stuff, which is why the whirlwinds do all right in this. But you can't have an army of whirlwinds. We've tried. You can have 3.
Games Workshop said no, which is really for the best.
Yeah,
I remember the parking lot Imperial Guard lists at the start of the edition.
it's not fun, is it? In that respect, it's a shame. For Imperial Fist players, I feel sorry for them that this is kind of their go-to, like their archetypal sort of how they should be playing in the narrative. But in the narrative, they also should be sat in fortifications. Unfortunately, we did try to put a fortification into this, but my God, it's still rubbish.
I don't know if it's maybe playable in this, but I didn't want to go down that route. The thought of a Hammerfall bunker being, playable it hurts my soul. So thank you for watching. That has been episode 5. As always, if you think you can do better than us, please do whack the list in the comments. I would love to see it. I think there may well be an interesting build that you can come up with. I haven't found it. John hasn't found it. If you think you're smarter than us, let us know, but only backing up. Make sure you've got the list there as well. If you want to see the detachment of your choice next week, we have 2 remaining. Which 2 have we got left, John?
The Gladius and the First Company Veteran one. Which...
yes, everyone's favorite. So you can vote in the comments. We'll probably put a poll up in the next few days as well. Let us know what you want to see, and we will be back with you next week.